Welcome to the Diary of a Manager, your go-to resource for actionable managing tips, insights on management concepts, and effective ways on how to manage yourself. With your host, Brunello. And now, here's the show. Today we have a very special guest. She's a lawyer. She is the head of the legal team in the Asia Pacific region of a large logistics company. She has extensive knowledge in corporate legal practice and managing legal professionals in different jurisdictions. We discuss a lot of topics, including the life of being a lawyer, how to manage different people from different backgrounds, and things like strategic thinking, AI, how to handle stress, and a lot more. So get ready, because this episode is going to be full of insightful advice, tips, and recommendations on how to become a good manager. This episode is broken down into 3 parts. This is the first part, and this is the interview.
Hello, Christina.
Hello, Ronaldo.
So thank you for coming today. And so this podcast that I started is all about giving tips or advice to up-and-coming managers in terms of how they manage the teams, the employees, and that's why I decided to invite you today to be able to share to our listeners and viewers on your experience in managing people and different teams. So just first off, just introduce yourself and your position, not necessarily the name of the company, and maybe the industry.
Yep. So my name is Christina Pavlovic. I'm a general counsel of a large global logistics company. I've been in the role for coming up to 8 years.
Yep.
And even at the beginning of the role, I was in a management position, as you know, but at a ANZ level only. And about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I was promoted into a regional level management role where I look after all of Asia Pacific,
Yep.
Which is quite a larger geographical portfolio
Coverage.
as well. And in addition to that, obviously, there's 19 countries as well,
Yep.
which has its own set of challenges. But prior to my foray into logistics, I was actually at a facility management company as a senior legal counsel, and I still had a team in that role, but it was a much smaller team, and I was actually looking after procurement back then. I don't know if you know that. So I had the legal and the procurement department, and I think I had a total of 4 people in the team at the time.
Okay.
So
So maybe going back into, hopefully you can still remember, before you got into a managerial position role, just maybe starting out as in your legal career as a lawyer. Do you remember if there were specific things that you did, or was it a goal that you set for yourself, that I'm going to be a manager, or were things just unfolded in front of you and you just took opportunity as they come?
To be honest, I never considered myself a people manager. So starting out as a lawyer, because I know I've been practicing now for 18-ish years, so I've been a lawyer for a very long time. But in the first 5 to 10 years as a lawyer, as a practicing solicitor, your focus is on honing those technical skills.
Yes.
So above all else, you want to make sure that you're a really good lawyer, that you're a strong lawyer, that you really develop those hard skills rather than the soft skills. So to be honest, even back then, before I went into management, I never had a particular desire or need to want to manage people.
Yeah.
It came naturally to me, and it wasn't something that I necessarily actively sought. But in saying that, as you get more senior and you climb the ranks of any organisation, people management is a natural byproduct of that, because of course the more senior you get,
it's a natural progression.
Exactly, the more likely you are to be managing people. So it's not something that even back in the day I was necessarily focusing on, because I was always very happy to sit in my box, get my experience in the technical, commercial, contractual side of things, understand corporate law, understand the legislative framework within which we were operating back at the time, which for me was always public health, public transport and major projects. That's where I started my career. So for me, it was more about understanding the legislation, learning how to adapt my technical skills. It wasn't about the people. But in saying that, it's interesting how now that I do manage people, it's almost instinctive. Like you go back to the bad managers that you had, and I can name a couple over the years that I've had, and you always always default to those experiences naturally. And I don't think it's trauma. It's not necessarily trauma, but you go, oh, this is not what I should be doing, or this is what I should be doing, because you learn from those experiences. But it's not. You don't think of it at the time, but when you do manage people, you go back to that and you go, this is how I'm not going to do things.
So okay. So you learn from the goods and bads. So you, in saying that, do you think that as a prerequisite then that you need to be really good at your technical skills in whatever profession you have to be able to progress to that next level? Or some people argue that you can just be so in your technical skill, but really good at people's skills, and then you can just progress.
My view is to be honest, I hadn't turned my mind to it until just now when you've asked the question. I don't think I would be able to manage a team of people, of professionals, unless I knew how to do my job. So without question, if I'm not an expert at what I do, and if I don't know the hard skills, if I don't know the technical skills, and if I'm if I'm not a good lawyer, how can I guide and lead and mentor a team of junior lawyers?
That is true.
Unless I know that myself. So I think that they're two very different skill sets. Of course, you've got the technical skills, which are your hard skills, but you've also got the soft skills, which is about understanding how to transfer those skills, guide people, lead them, mentor them, support them, give them what they need to be able to one day do that as well. But I just think you can't do the latter without being an expert in the former. That's my opinion.
Which kind of makes sense, right? Because if you're trying to mentor new people, up-and-coming professionals, you need to have enough knowledge to actually train them, equip them with skills that they need as they're starting out in their careers, right?
Exactly. It's different if I'm stepping in if I'm being appointed as a CEO or a managing director of a company. That's a completely different level of leadership and skills, because that's really taking on a helicopter view. It's having an understanding of all. It's having an understanding of all parts of the business, but having enough of a baseline understanding to say, well, this is who I need to appoint. So, as a CEO, you're not going to be an IT expert, but you're going to know that you need to appoint a CIO who's going to be able to guide you into making the best decisions for the company as far as IT and cyber-related matters are concerned. Same goes for legal. A CEO won't necessarily be a great, or they won't necessarily be expected to be a great lawyer or understand the ins and outs of the law, but they should know that they need to appoint somebody who's very strong in the legal field to be their general counsel, so that they can then advise them on how to run the company. So I think that, which is why often when you appoint CEOs and managing directors, often they've got qualifications like MBAs and stuff like that, because those sorts of credentials give them that baseline knowledge and understanding to be able to sit at that level and advise the company. But I think for me personally, given that I'm still very much in the legal space and I'm the GC of a region, I need to be able to have those skills, the technical skills, in order to guide the business and to just run the business at a functional level to ensure that everyone's doing everything properly, and even just having a baseline knowledge of things like competition laws and antitrust and all that sort of stuff. I need to be able to have that. Otherwise, how do I pick up issues? How do I guide the team? How do I do all that stuff? So
I've seen these themes in my previous interactions with other people who are, technical people, accounting, legal, that to be able to progress to the next level of being a manager, you have to have a good foundational background in terms of experience and knowledge in your area of expertise. In your case, legal, other people accounting. now that we've established that you need to have a good foundation in technical knowledge, what do you think is the best way from moving from that space to up your game a bit to become a manager now, in terms of developing your people skills on how to manage people? Because obviously, once you step out from your lawyering job or being a lawyer to become a managing lawyer now, managing not just yourself but also other people, in your experience, what helped you in the transition period from being a normal lawyer to become a manager of lawyers?
That's a very good question, and I don't think with me it was conscious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think I went in there and said, okay, now I've got to manage a team, now I have to adapt these skills or I have to hone these skills. I think it kind of was a bit of a natural progression for me. But in saying that, I think it was a long progression, and also it was a bit of a learning curve, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
I think I had to learn, in hindsight now, when I look at the way I am today versus probably the way I was when I first started managing a team 9 years ago now, when I was at my old role, it was a relegation of control. So you need to
back off a little bit
and you need to support and guide and provide the foundation to enable your team to grow and to want to come to work, to be comfortable, to be happy, because you want a happy team and you want a thriving team. But yeah, you've got to give them the bandwidth and the courage and the confidence to be able to do that, which means you have to back off sometimes and let them do their job.
Yeah.
That was probably the hardest part for me, because I don't consider myself a control freak, but I like things done a certain way.
Yeah.
And anybody that reports to me will know that I'm quite particular. Not in terms of being a micromanager, I don't mean that, but just in terms of having a very high standard, because in legal, you can't afford to make mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, you put a comma in the wrong place, you know the old
it makes
adage,
a difference, yeah.
the whole purpose of the sentence can change if your comma is in the wrong place. So I think, we have a very high standard when it comes to ensuring that things are accurate, because one error can cost us quite a bit. But it's about giving your team the rope and allowing them to learn.
I can relate to that, because if you used to do the substantive work yourself, the details of the work, the transition period from being an employee to a manager, it's quite difficult, because now you're relegating that work that you used to do yourself, including all the details, to someone else who you don't know if they're going to do a good job as you. And that for me was also difficult when I did the transition, and I had to just pick the right people or the right resources to delegate those tasks to. And
but did you ever do it? Sorry to interrupt. Did you ever do it and find that when you're reviewing the work, or when you're not even reviewing it, but doing a sanity check, did you ever sit there and go, oh, but that's not how I would have done it? And then do you have that internal conflict of, do I bother mentioning it because it's not really a deal breaker? Do I mention it to the person with the view that I can get them to do it a bit better next time, or do I sit back and not bother mentioning it?
I did mention it,
and just let them go and then bring it up next time. I think that's that internal conflict that I always have with myself.
And how did you overcome that? How did you approach that over time?
I think it's just about picking your battles sometimes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's about picking your battles, and you can't pick, not everyone is going to be like you. And I'm not saying that I'm the benchmark and I'm the standard. We're all different, but it's that transition. You eventually have to let go. And your job is to put the foundations in place. You've got to have the process in place. You've got to give your team the tools and the guidance that they need to be able to do the job, but it's going to be done their way. It's not going to be done your way. And that's about that relegation of control that I think is really important. I do have the tendency to not always, I do step back into it sometimes. So sometimes I sit there and I go, oh, okay, I'm just going to point that out.
Yeah.
But then I have to learn to step back again.
What are the instances where you have to step in? Like, is there like, oh, I think that's okay, that would do, 10%, or do you just look at the critical signposts?
It's the critical ones,
yeah.
So I think it's just risk versus reward. If I think that the risk of letting something go outweighs the benefit, then I step in. But if it's not worth it, then I don't mention it. So I think it's about, well, what are the consequences? And if I mention something, I think you just have to weigh it up on a case by case basis. But I think, as a manager, I just think it's managing people is a completely different skill set. It's not about the technical anymore. You don't sit there and you go, oh, the comma should have been put here, or you should have reworded it this way. Like now, if I get a letter that's been prepared by my team, I literally just go through it in 2.5 seconds, just check for the substantive stuff, off you go. I don't redline it, I don't do anything like that. Not only does that make the team feel valued, like they've done the right thing, it's a good job, and they do, they always, their effort's always there, but you don't want to reduce that morale by redlining and critiquing something for the sake of doing it. That's not where my value is going to be. My value is going to be in ensuring that, my team has work-life balance, they enjoy their job, they're being constantly challenged, and that I keep the politics away from the team. That's going to be my priority. It's not about, the other insignificant stuff.
Yeah, so you're more focused. So you're not just managing the actual work now, you're also managing people and people's emotions as well.
Exactly. And you know about each other's lives as well. I mean, you know that somebody might be moving house, or somebody might be going through a death in the family, or somebody might be nursing a new puppy at home, or whatever it is. And it's just, that's what I like about the camaraderie of having a team, not only to support you from a professional perspective, but also from a human perspective as well. It's about knowing that people have their own lives after work. It's not just about the 9 to 5 of work. It's about everything else that we do outside of that. And I quite like that that part of it.
And then you assess people's capabilities as well, because if you have a big team, for example, some members of the team have more capacity to do more. Maybe they work faster, and some of them may work a little bit slower. So how do you approach those different learning and workspace of different members in the team?
It's a tough one. I don't think that there's anyone that, in my current situation anyway, I don't think that there's anyone that I can sit there and say confidently is not at capacity. And that's purely because of the structure of our team and the fact that we are so lean, as you know. I think that if anything, it's the opposite. At the moment, we're just drowning with work, which is always the case with lawyers, because you're not just doing contracts, but you're reviewing claims, we're managing insurances, we're integrating, we're doing M&A, and there's all the day-to-day stuff in between, right? Sometimes there's employment claims, sometimes there's potential cyber threats and all that stuff. So there's always people there that are inundated and swamped and can't do anything more than what we can do. But in saying that, keeping regular dialogue and communication with your team is super important, because you don't ever want it to be a case where somebody's sitting around waiting for work while the other person is drowning and there's nothing in between. You have to have that open dialogue, and you have to all talk regularly to understand what the workload is and to ensure that you're allocating it evenly as well. But in saying that, part of that example that I just cited around the person sitting around doing nothing, it just wouldn't logically happen in the current team, because I just don't think that anybody would allow it to happen. You know what I mean?
The circumstances don't allow it.
The circumstances, not only do the circumstances not allow it, but I think that people would genuinely feel bad. Like, I can't imagine one of the lawyers in Southeast Asia sitting around saying, like, if we've got the guy in Indonesia saying, oh, I'm just doing nothing, and then the girl in Malaysia that we've got at the moment is drowning and has too much on and he's just not offering to help. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we are all a team. We are all collegiate in the way that we work together, and it would never happen. So part of building that culture of help and support is that it's that desire. You want to be able to help your teammate.
Yeah.
You don't want to sit there and watch them drown while you're sitting there.
In terms of talking about allocating work, do you do it on a weekly basis, daily basis? What's the best frequency?
It's a bit different. So for us, because we're allocated by our team is structured by sub-regions. So it's a little bit, so the work is actually allocated in terms of what sub-region accepts the work. So if we're talking about contracts, for example, if it's a contract for Vietnam, it'll go to the Southeast Asia team. And then that will get allocated by my head of Southeast Asia accordingly. But in saying that, we have had multiple occasions where we've had regular team catch-ups, and it's been made really clear, and me and my heads are also very well aware of this, that you allocate it in accordance with country and who manages what country, but if somebody is busy and you've got capacity, take the contract off them or offer to help. And I think it's almost logical, right? I think.
Yeah.
It's just, it's just part of that that process of helping each other. But in terms of our current setup, it's very geographically driven because of course, if we've got a matter in Hong Kong, that will be looked after by the Greater China team, not the Southeast Asia team. So it is very geographically segmented at the moment. But if it's something just generic, like something that can cut across any sub-region, then it's just whoever's got capacity. But that doesn't mean that I don't get involved either.
My name is Ronaldo, and welcome to the Diary of the Manager.